Hi, everybody, and welcome to the Lead Podcast, where our intention is to develop the next generation of future hospitality industry leaders. Today, we're going to have a conversation around authenticity over authority, and how real relationships create real connection. And I think it's a powerful conversation rather than let's do lots of things. And let's really create depth in our relationship and connections around us. Amy, it's great to see you again.
Oh, great to see you, Mateo. Matt. I am so excited today because we have Jen Kaufman here, who is becoming and has become a dear friend. A group we have underground called the Badass Ladies, and she's a part of that. We have to work in numbers here. We're more impactful that way. But this is an incredible human that makes others better. Whoever she touches or comes across gets a really good positive outlook and uplifted by her, and she's just kind of this light in her entire organization. I got to sit in a all staff meeting recently, and you can just feel the energy that goes into her and how she puts out. So she's kind of that nuclei, and I just loved hanging out with her for the day. This is an interesting story because Jen is a unicorn. She went from director of construction, which is very male dominated, as we know. I've only met another woman who is in that same position, Chelsea, who I work with currently. And then she moved into a chief of staff with major decision rights for the organization and works closely with the CEO, with Tim. So great to have you, Jen. I know we're keeping you between us and a neon show with beer on a showboat in Chicago to celebrate a wedding, but thanks for giving us some time. I know that this is a really good journey to tell because a lot of our listeners are emerging leaders and they're servers or managers or VP of operations or maybe a baby in construction or design and just starting out, and they want to become Jen Kaufmans and they want to know how to get there. So I think the story of the authenticity over authority and all of that, and that leadership piece will help them get there. So thanks for being here.
Yeah, thank you. What an amazing introduction. I hope I can live up to that. Thank you again, Matt and Amy, for having me. I'm really looking forward to our conversation.
And Jen, why don't you tell us just a little? Amy shared some of your journey, but just
Yeah.
give us a little bit more texture to that journey, where you started and what led you to where you are today.
Yeah, I'll give you the elevator pitch, but this is gonna just go with me on this. I'm gonna start back a little bit as I came out of college because I think it's kind of important. I actually went to college for theater, and I had big plans to act on the stage, and so I moved to Boston to the East Coast right out of college, and turns out I don't make a very good starving artist, and I wanted a job. And back in the early 2000s, there was these things called like headhunters that you find out of like, a paper, like an actual physical paper. And so I went and I took a typing test. And, they sent me to this place. They're like, oh, you'd be perfect for this place. They sent me to this, they called it a design company. They thought I was kind of, I guess, I don't know, cool and I'd fit in. But it actually turned out to be a
You
construction.
are cool. You
Yeah,
are cool.
right.
Come on.
So it actually turned out to be a construction company. And I'm like, all right, well, when in Rome, So the
Take a
second thing,
chance.
right, exactly.
Yeah.
Um, so the second thing I learned about myself is that it turns out I'm also not very good at being stagnant in a job, and I really wanted to have an impact, and I didn't know what that meant at the time, but so I kind of kept moving up to the ranks. I started out as an assistant to an assistant, essentially. And I think at that time, that company was probably around, I don't know, maybe 120 million. And by the time I left, it was 600 million. And so that kind of marked also the second kind of like pattern I had in my career, which is that I participated in organizations that were high growth. And so I left and I moved to Chicago to start up a general contracting company with someone I had worked out on the East Coast with. And at that point in time, Cooper's Hawk became our client. So they hired us to build restaurant number two. And so they were my client. Um, and I was VP of operations at that construction company, and I ran all the support services and also the field services for the general contracting company. And then we had that dip and that recession around 2011. And Tim, the owner, the CEO and founder of Cooper Stock, decided that he didn't want to deal with the middleman anymore. So he hired myself and one other person. We had made an impression on him to kind of get on Cooper Stock payroll. And so we were actually an internal construction company at the restaurant, which I think is very unusual and forward thinking we were able to capitalize and keep all of our profits while we build restaurants. And then I guess sometime around 2013, 2014, we transitioned to a more typical development program. And that's kind of where I ended up as director of construction before I became chief of staff. So I'll pause there. But that's sort of how I got in from theater to construction. And that's how I ended up at Cooper's Hawk.
I love that you took a gamble though and a risk. I mean, it all started with the newspaper. That's why Matt and I were giggling, because we just heard this story that the old school, now you're on applying online and all these things. But back in the day, you had to go through the paper. But you took a gamble and went completely outside of what you thought you wanted to do. And I think that taking the risk is a great story.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, and when I just loved being a director of construction. I really loved being in the construction world. I felt like being part of creating something from dirt, and then ending up where people are in their training and then ultimately end up serving food and changing people's lives through hospitality was like the thing, And Tim, my, CEO of Cooper's Hawk, had said to me, over the years, I think you're in the wrong job. And I kept, I'd look behind me and I'd be like, is he trying to fire me? I don't know why he's telling me I'm in the wrong. I know what, he kept giving me paychecks. So, but, and I just wasn't smart enough to figure out what he was saying. And he had offered me the chief of staff job, maybe kind of early on in my career at Cooper's Hawk. And I didn't know what it was. And
do you mind kind of saying what it is? Because some people have asked me the same thing, and some organizations use chief of staffs as different things. But I think the way that Cooper's Hawk has that set up is very similar to many.
Yeah, I will say, just for the folks on the, that are listening, chief of staff is really whatever the organization needs, or we call them principals, like my boss, my principal. And so that can mean anything from like a high level executive admin to anyone who's running like a functional department, like maybe they're chief of staff and they do strategy and planning only. So my role as chief of staff at Cooper's Hawk has evolved over the years, because in order to stay relevant and be good, I have to kind of suit the needs of the organization. Where I am now, in terms of my role, is I would say sort of like three buckets. I'm responsible for what I call heartbeat management. So, making sure that I understand the needs of the organization, how the organization's feeling, making sure everyone is communicated with appropriately, making sure the leadership team is aligned with the priorities of the organization and of Tim. And then I would say there's this sort of like organizational or strategy liaison. So, I have to, through relationship building, which I'm sure we'll get to, I have to make sure that the priorities are trickling down and being executed. And I'll offer suggestions, or maybe I'll see something that's going on in the organization. I'll say, this might need some attention, and I can act as an advisor or a middle person between the leadership team and the principal when appropriate. And then the third bucket, which I think is really unique to probably me and Tim's relationship, is, to the layman, I say, I want to make sure that he's at the right place at the right time, talking to the right people about the right things. And the people that are there are talking about the right things and show up to the best of their ability.
Oh my gosh, I love that. If we could hashtag that on a bumper sticker. Because it is a thing that people don't do well in organizations. And that's pretty, there's a class on that right there. That's a TED Talk.
Well, it's also not measurable, right? I mean, you can't, how do I measure my success and all of that? And so, being someone who's involved in, developments of KPIs and OKRs, and, I want to make sure that I'm showing up and that I have a goal and I'm successful. And so, well, first I should ask you, can I curse?
We do curse. So Jen, Matt, I was with Jen and I cursed a little bit.
You did?
During he's like, you did? during a fireside chat, and I've had gremlins since then. And then the other day I said, okay, I've been stuck in this mud for like, wait, I need to get over it. And Jen's like, nobody cares. I was like, okay, I just need to take her word for it. And I hope she would say they care, but yes, I fucking cursed. So
okay, great, good. Because I'll share with you what my measurement is, and it's no joke. And I actually did tell Tim this at some point, but my goal is to reduce the number of what the fucks.
Yeah.
So if he comes out of the meeting and comes to me and goes, "What the fuck was that?" I'm like, I don't know. I'm sorry. That's a problem for me. Like that means I'm not showing up to do my job correctly.
I'm so writing that down. Reduce the number in an organization. That's a really good one.
Yeah, because like I want to make sure that no one is surprised. Like everyone is sort of prepared. Everyone knows what's coming, and it doesn't mean that I'm removing people's autonomy, right? Like, and that's important. Like they might have an idea that I know, or I think I know, which is important. That Tim is not going to be favorable to. He's got strong feelings on this or whatever. And so I'm not going to say don't present your idea, but I might say like this is the best way for you to present your idea. And so he's
being that head coach.
Yeah,
you're head coaching them. Yeah,
that's right. That's
great.
And so there's a level of trust there because they have to trust that I'm not going to rain on their parade or stop them from presenting an idea that they want. They have to trust that I'm giving them good advice. I'm not sending them off the rails. And they have to trust that the advice I gave them was bad, that I'm going to own that, and that I'm not going to let them take the heat for something that I told them they probably should do. And so there's, that's where that relationship building comes in for me anyway.
And I think there's just such an incredible pattern of feedback from where you started on your journey. That's important, I think, to all leaders, but especially emerging. And when you shared your introduction, I really loved your reflection. So you reflected on what did you love, what did you learn, and I think where you are is very intentional, because one thing I joked around with Amy recently is we spend more time planning our vacations, or emerging leaders do, than they do their career path. But you talked about, I'm really great at this. I fit emerging brands at this scale with this complexity. Now I'm managing the WTFs inside the company, and that would go back to early stage kind of desire. And one thing is, tell me about, because it sounds like you have a lot going on, but you're also very in control and very peaceful. So a lot of people thrive off chaos. I love it. I can tell you do it way better than I do in a much more complex scale, but I lean into it. But talk a little bit, because
I never noticed that.
we hear from leaders that there's so much going on and there's chaos, but some people thrive in chaos. What does chaos mean to you, and how does it show up in the work you do?
Yeah, so I have the fortune to have a job that has impact and that I like, and it is often my job from day to day is often controlled by what others' jobs are. So what I mean by that is, and I think operators can probably relate to this, you could show up with the best of intentions and you've set everyone up for success and you're a great leader and all the systems are running and the kitchen's clean and everything's going well. But, one of the tech stack programs gets hacked and your POS system goes down and your day's toast, right? It's gone. And so, all of these things are out of your control. And so the first thing for me was accepting that was an environment that I liked to be in, and it was an environment that I should expect. Yeah. And so how do you then manage your way through that? And so, have you ever heard of VUCA?
No.
Okay, so VUCA is I think the military developed it, but it's a way of describing a situation that can be out of your control. So it stands for, let me see if I can remember this. It stands for volatility, uncertainty, and now I forgot, ambiguity, and what's the C? I'll come back to it. But it's a way of understanding that the environment that you're in is something that you can't control, and it is happening to you, but that you can control it through planning and being thoughtful, right? And so I think I told you, like, before we got on the call that, today, like this week, we had what I would consider to be a couple of emergencies. And so for me, that would be something that I didn't know it was coming, but that I can sit when it's happening and I can plan my way through techniques that I've created, or just an acceptance that it's just something I've got to kind of swim my way out of. And then at the other end, it's exciting and it's different, and it makes my job important and worthwhile. And so I think, when operators are letting those things happen to them, if they can, re-ground themselves in the situation that at the end of the day, they're in hospitality and they're changing people's lives through their actions. I think it helps you kind of work through any sort of situation that's chaotic.
Yeah. And one thing that I see too is that we often talk to leaders, exactly what you shared. We can plan for patterns inside the business. One of the first words you shared that stuck out of these patterns, but operationally, there's 5-day challenges that are going to present themselves tonight inside your restaurant, and the more prepared, the better that we can handle it.
Yeah.
And then, and how do we just anticipate objections or patterns and prepare for them accordingly? And then the outliers will present themselves. But a big part, like one thing, again, with this peaceful delivery that you have is, as a leader, how do you influence those around you? So I don't think that you have a management, push. Here's what you need to do, but more
Right.
influence. Would you agree? And what does that look like for you?
Yeah, I don't. The leadership team doesn't report to me, but I have to be able to influence them, or at least be a resource for them. And I have to also recognize when I'm not showing up that way, And so one of the things that I lean into a lot in terms of it, it's kind of just how my brain works. I put things into like metaphors, and I like to visually, I think that's where the construction part comes from. So I kind of think about relationships as being my capital, my currency. I think of it as like a tangible thing. And so I need to put work into earning back relationship currency or capital. And I'm very intentional about that. I don't know if anyone who's witnessing me from day to day would think that I was being intentional, but I am. In fact, there's a relationship that I know that I need to repair right now that's like just like living in the back of my head, right? And so I do that because I want, of course, like what we talked about the trust and connection, right? But it's also because I'm a human being and I will step incorrectly at some point, or I'll make a mistake. And even as part of my growth, I want to stretch my wings and try new things. And there will be stumbling blocks along the way in that process.
Yeah.
And because my job, if my stumbling blocks are probably going to affect someone else. And so I want to draw on that capital, and I want them to just automatically know that my intent was positive. I want them to know that I'll own up to my mistakes or my missteps if something went wrong. And I want them to be, frankly, on my side, right? I want them to be able to say, I would rather they come to me and say, like, you're going sideways on this, versus them not telling me. And then it becomes a sideways problem with 5 people, not just with one person. Yeah. And so I have to intentionally work on building that relationship capital.
Do you mind sharing how you do that? I mean, we've talked on the podcast before about scheduling time on your calendar, working on, getting coffee in the morning, being intentional with being intentional, if that makes sense. And so how do you do that? Because you get pulled in a million different directions. Managers on the floor do. VP, when you're a regional director, you're pulled in a million different directions. If you're in construction, you're pulled in. But how do you, and it's something Matt teaches in his, when he's speaking to companies, but how do you save space to make sure that you're actually being intentional with the rest of your day or your week? But how do you do that with relationships that you're talking about? Because I think that's really important for the audience to understand how to do.
Yeah. So I'll give you one tactical way. But it's going to be for sure something you've heard before. And then I'll kind of tell you how I fit it into what actually happens. So like the tactical response to that would be that you're intentional about scheduling time with people. You show up on time, you engage, you listen, and you make sure that space is saved, right? And in all reality, that's difficult to do when you're in a position or a job that's controlled by what else is going on in the organization or the other decisions that other people make, right? And I think that's true for operators. And so this is how I do it in actuality when I only have like 5 minutes between a meeting. So I try and show up authentically with all interactions. So I'm try and be myself at all times. And that probably means that sometimes I'm cursing, sometimes I'm maybe sharing too much. I'm not saying you shouldn't learn and keep the skill of reading the room, right? There are times when you should not do that and you need to show up with a different kind of executive presence. But I do try and lean into that authenticity as best as I can. The second thing is that you need to make sure that you're a really good listener, and this is kind of where the geeky theater comes back for me, the theater training. I actually sometimes present as not a very good listener because I have a style of communicating that I like to call collaborative interruption.
That's another good bumper sticker.
Yeah.
I'm a collaborative interrupter.
Yeah. I just did it to you. I'm like, yes, I am like so into what you're saying, and I'm like talking over you, and I'm like, it's not great for everyone, right? And it throws off you're not listening vibes. And so it is something that I have to actively work on to make sure that people understand that I'm listening. And so however listening shows up for you, that's how it has to show up in terms of creating authentic relationships. And then for me, I pay attention a lot to people's actions and what they're not saying.
Yeah.
And that leads like the second kind of like authentic sort of groundwork, right? And then lastly, it's just I fit it in wherever I can. I'm super transparent about what's going on in my world. I try and ask questions about what's going on in their world, both personal and professional. I try and be there for any sort of like mentorship capabilities, anything that's going on in the organization. I try and keep an eye on emerging leaders and make sure that I'm connecting with them. But I'm really fitting it in all these little beginning of meetings, end of meetings, on my way in the hallway. Like, I just try and be like a really present presence, if that makes sense.
It does make sense. Are you somebody when you do that? I'm this way myself a little bit, and I think Matt, you are too, just knowing you for a while now. Are you somebody that actually has to go back and sit in some peace and quiet and fill your own bucket because we're on stage all the time with what we do. And whether like for my role, I'm in the restaurants, and last night you're at the party and you're talking to all the servers and managers want to talk and sit down, and you're doing all of that, and you're doing that, like you said, at the end of meetings, beginning of meetings, and being there for all of these people as chief of staff and as that role. How do you fill your own buckets so you can show up as your best authentic self and not get drained? Because it does happen, I think, to everyone. As much as everybody's like, I'm an extrovert, and I'm like, you still got to pause, and it can't just be in the shower. So
yeah, I do think like I would label myself as an extrovert introvert, and after a certain amount of time, I don't like, if you looked me in the eye, I'd want to stab you. I'm like, I can't anymore. Like I need to take a break. And so
where's the wine wall? Where's
I
the
know
wine
exactly
room?
exactly. My poor partner, like she knows when she's gotta zip out of my hemisphere. But at work I can't do that. Like I would love to, like if I don't have a meeting for 2 hours, I want to shut my door and I want to hide out. And I do that sometimes just because I actually have to get work done, but I don't do it for the purposes of recharging. So I'll share with you my very lame way of recharging at work, which is I blast music in I have like headphones. And so in between meetings or something, I'll pop in my headphones, or I walk into the building. It's like I'm walking in like to what is it, walk up music, I walk into the building and get my head straight. So
what's your song?
Oh no.
I knew you were gonna ask you.
I couldn't even begin to tell you the song. I like all songs, except for country. But
No Dolly Parton?
Oh no, I love Dolly. I'm sorry. I do like some country. I like Johnny Cash.
Oh my gosh, I was going to say, forget the podcast. We're done.
We're done. We're done. No.
If you don't like Dolly, come on.
I know. I love Dolly. Yeah.
Okay, you're in. You're in.
But yeah, that's how I do it. I listen to music, and sometimes I think I try and be really conscious of. Sometimes I think that makes me unavailable, right? Because people can see that I have my headphones in, so I try and take them out, or I wear ones where they just clip around my ears, so I can still hear what's going on. But I definitely get busted in my own zone with those headphones in sometimes.
I like that though. That's good. You got to have, everybody's got their own process and way. It's good you're taking space. I think that's good for the listeners to hear is everybody has to do it. And I think sometimes they think they're leaders, or for them to get promoted that they will always have to be on.
Yeah.
But everyone, your managers, your directors, your CEO, we talked about the higher you go, the lonelier it is. And so how does everyone in a leadership role, or even as a server or a busser, and, the emerging leaders, like they need to all take space for themselves. That's great.
You do. And to kind of like root it back and like living in chaos, like I do have like one really tactical thing that I do that I love. I call it my reset routine. I don't know if you guys have some, maybe you have it, but you don't give it a nerdy name like I do. But, you have, I have to have a name for it. I don't know why. But, you have all these, I have all these like inputs is what I call it, so you got people like stopping you in the hallway. And I think operators can relate to this too. And you got, something going down over here, and like someone wants to talk about their pay, or, then you get emails, you got whatever it is, you got all this stuff coming in, and I can just feel it. Like, I don't know where to go next. And I'm feeling a little out of control. I'm in that VUCA situation. And I need to get out of it. And so I have a reset routine, and it's the same every time. I start with my principal's emails, then I go to my texts, then I go to my OneNote, and I have like this circle. And by the time I'm done, I'm like, I've taken a little bit of time for myself. I know what I need to do next. And I feel organized and ready to kind of get back into the game.
I like the reset. Yeah.
Just a little bit more about that, just because I think it's a great way as we move towards the close, as we all go, and Amy's absolutely right. Like, no matter what level you're at, there's a moment of overwhelm or just consumption overload. But I think your definition of a reset routine, don't need the actual details, but you said kind of review email and text. Is it your emails, or is there something you read that resets you?
Yeah, it's just the act of doing the same thing. It's like I've given myself permission to stop everything coming in, and then I know what it is. I'm going to do the same thing. I do it every time. And in 5 minutes, or 10 minutes, I'm going to come out on the other end with a plan, right? It's like taking a deep breath. It's like taking 10 deep breaths to meditate or something. So whatever that is for you, I mean, it could be like walking around the building, or it could be, I don't know, grabbing your assistant general manager and having half a cup of coffee, or whatever it is. But like for me, it's just reviewing all the inputs. So by the time I come out on the other end of it, I've got my priorities straight, and I can like get back into the game.
Love that.
No, I love it. And we're seeing so much. There's a lot of meetings now, and I'm seeing when we kick them off, we're doing grounding exercises, we're doing square breathing, box breathing. We see the Tiger Woods fist pump. If anybody likes Tiger Woods, there's a routine we do with that resets us at a certain stage. But anything said to pause and reset.
See, and you didn't even know it was your reset routine. There you go. I've given it a name. You're welcome.
Her job is done. She's here for the purpose. Check the box. Nice job.
So one thing people are going to get out of this. It's be great.
One last question I have for you, because like in this conversation, you come across as one of the most authentic people I've had a chance to engage with in a long time.
I agree.
And I don't say shit. I don't mean excuses. Or that's what I just say. I just don't. And
you feel comfortable cursing. I love it.
I do. We'll see how
Matt, he texted me last night because something went down, and I looked, and I was telling him I was on the floor with the staff, and all I see is F of a, and I was like, Matt, what's going on? Are you okay? It's like, are you okay over there? It's going to be okay. We're going to be okay.
So as because I think we need to recognize leadership when it shows up. So what would be just my closing question, a mindset shift? Where what could a leader do just to do a reset routine with themselves and without judgment, just reset their authenticity for themselves? Like, is there any recommendation you have just to pause and?
Yeah, it's not very tactical. So it is, for me, it is a mindset or a mind shift, which is, and it happened to me probably right around the time I accepted the job of chief of staff, which is where I decided to take the feedback that I had gotten over my career and leverage it into growth, right? And I don't know, that's not very revolutionary, right? But I guess
It is revolutionary because a lot of people either can't, you and I've talked about this, they either can't take feedback, they don't ask for feedback, and they're not listening to the feedback to act on it. So I do think it's revolutionary, actually.
and I want to be very clear. Like when I'm getting feedback, my poor Tim or anyone who's talking to me, my body will react. My body will react in ways that my brain is not reacting. It is bizarre. I can't. I will actually tear up when I'm getting feedback, and it's like I'm like, stop that, because it's almost like hijacking the conversation with emotions that I actually don't have. So I'm not saying I don't still spin out when I get some feedback or whatever, but it is
Mm.
it's a self-awareness. I'm very rarely getting feedback that I don't already know about, right? And so it's just another piece of the puzzle to leverage into my superpowers, right? So if perchance I was getting feedback that maybe I didn't read the room correctly or something, that's I'm going to leverage that into my superpower of authenticity, right? Like, oh, it's another piece to the puzzle about how I'm going to show up in the right way for the right people at the right time.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's about sort of rerouting that into strengths, I guess, which doesn't mean you shouldn't examine it and take it seriously and move through it. But, it's just about that self-awareness of where you are and what's going on around you and leveraging it into your superpower, I guess, is how I would say. Does that answer your question? I feel like I got sidetracked a little bit there.
No,
No, that's
it
all.
answered the question well. Yeah.
Yeah. And now everyone knows my eyes tear up when I get feedback, which is fucking worse. It's the worst because I'm like, someone will be telling me, I'm like, yeah, you're right. I screwed that up. I'm like, ignore this weird Bambi tear coming down my eye. It's the worst. It's the worst, you know?
Amy, if you want to close us, one thing, what is your feedback? I've heard you say to leaders many times about receiving and acting on feedback. Maybe as we close to this episode, what's your position on it, Amy?
I think that I just had this conversation about somebody in our organization today with our executive team, and feedback is a gift. Somebody truly cares about you. They're pausing, they're reflecting, and giving you some insights. I've also said not all feedback is great, but you do have to listen to it when it's being given to you. You can decide what to do with it after. And you will not get better if you're not getting it and you're not getting other people's insights, because as we've said on this podcast before, you get promoted when you're not in the room. You get an increase when you're not in the room. And so to ask your leader for feedback is important. To ask others for feedback is important. I know Matt, even between the pod, we're doing I was like, hey, feedback. And so it's important to get it. And then I think you also have to have mentors that will give you honest feedback and truly make you better and invest in you. And that takes it, like Jen said, sometimes you get the teary eye and you're like, this stings for a minute.
Mm-hmm.
But man, if you really can focus on it and adjust yourself and change and show up in a better way, you're growing and you do get to the next level that way. And people know that you are showing that you are insightful and that you want to invest in yourself. So, I think the people that you are the sum of the 5 people you're hanging out with right now. And what does that look like? And, Matt's smarter than I am. Jennifer's smarter than I am. So you hang out with those people and you start to become a more intelligent, calmer person. I'm not a calm person, of course, but it's just not in my makeup. So it's important. Feedback can make or break somebody's career.
Yeah. It's about being vulnerable, right? Like
Yeah.
you gotta be vulnerable to ask for it. You gotta be vulnerable to accept it. You gotta be vulnerable to act on it. Like
Yep.
it's just, I think being a vulnerable leader is so good. Yeah, it's just so important.
Yeah, agree.
I wanted to thank you both for such an incredible episode. Thank you, Jen. Thank you.
Thanks, Matt.
Thank you, Matt.
Matt has good hair today, doesn't he? Your hair looks good today,
Is
Matt.
it looking good? It's looking sharp. Like it's
Yeah,
getting
looking
Sharp.
good.
It's a good face.
big weekend ahead, Amy.
Yeah. It's a good face.
Day with Stacey Kane. Jen, thank you so much for
Thank
being
you so much.
on. You're incredible. Have the best time.
Thank you.
And thanks for supporting Lead.
Yeah, thanks. Bye.